Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Oop. I don't know what I'm getting close to. Hi, good evening, everyone. I think we should get going with the program. I have a few things to update you on, and then we'll be moving to the interesting part of the evening. So, good evening. My name's Deborah Lamb. I'm the current chairman of the Watch Hill Conservancy, and welcome to our 2022 annual meeting. I officially call the meeting to order. I want to take a few minutes to update you on our programs, our work, and priorities. And I want to focus that around three major initiatives in the Conservancy's mission: conservation, preservation, and informing community. In the arena of conservation, one of the Conservancy's most popular programs is our children's program we call the Napa Tree Investigators. The program is open to kids aged 7 to 14. It's offered in 2-hour sessions, 3 days a week, Tuesday to Thursday, for the months of July and August. This year, the program comprised 7 weeks, and each week has a dedicated theme or lesson plan. Children may attend 1 session each week. The program is an introduction to natural life in the Napa Tree Conservation Area and includes identification and information about marine flora and fauna, and introduces the children to coastal conservation. This season, we had 66 kids participate, which is a slight increase from our 2021 season. Other public engagement or outreach programs this year on Napa Tree included our Saturday morning Naturalist guided nature walks through the conservation area. We held 13 of those this year, or will by the time the season's over. At the end of June, we hosted a fabulous walk in conjunction with the Seven Rivers Festival. The walk was focused on Napa Tree's connection to the Wood-Pawcatuck watershed and the National Park Service designated wild and scenic river system. It was one of many regional events, was a big hit, and widely attended. In April, we hosted a group of the Coastal Institute's National Science Foundation funded PhD program alumni for a field trip on Napa Tree. Several of our science advisors were present to share aspects of our scientific stewardship and monitoring work. Many of the attendees had studied in the Napa Tree Point Conservation Area as part of their PhD programs. They were really interesting people to meet. They have careers in all areas of environmental conservation and education, and they have jobs all over the country. So it was really a wonderful afternoon to hang out with those folks who know everything about what I don't. So it was a lot of fun to be on Napa Tree with them. Under the guidance of our team of volunteer science advisors, we made further strides forward in several monitoring programs. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Piping Plover and Shorebird Monitoring Program, which our naturalist and science advisor crews provide support and assistance, recorded 3 breeding pairs of piping plovers, and we fledged 3 chicks on Napa Tree in 2022, which is a great accomplishment. Every one is a great accomplishment, so bravo. Another project we worked on with U.S. Fish and Wildlife was banding of oyster catchers, American oyster catchers. The banding is done to better understand their distribution and population dynamics. Being a non-scientist, I refer to this as a better way to understand the birds' travel times, distances, and patterns. For 16 years now, Napa Tree has been a site for Sacred Heart University's Project Limulus survey, an effort to gather data on regional horseshoe crabs. This season, nearly 6,500 horseshoe crabs were counted in 17 different surveys. These surveys were completed by more than 60 volunteers, including 2 Girl Scout troops and a group of biology students from the University of Connecticut. So again, we have some young conservationists out there. We welcome them. You'll be able to read more about these programs and many others in our State of Napa Tree report, which is published annually. This will be our 10th. It's sure to be a robust copy, and it'll be available in the spring of '23. We'll make sure we let you know when it's available. A few lucky of you get a paper copy, which is like a Manhattan phone book. In the sector of preserving community character, as you know, a big part of the mission of the Watch Hill Conservancy is to preserve and enhance the historic character of our community. This work is of particular importance as most of Watch Hill is recognized as an historic district on the National Register of Historic Places as declared by the United States Secretary of the Interior and the National Park Service. The Watch Hill Historic District's voluminous designation report identifies more than 180 structures as significantly contributing to the historic value of the district. Those structures and the district's historic designation are worthy of our very best efforts to protect and preserve them. The historic character of our community is under constant threat from development pressure, changes to state and town building and zoning code, and even Mother Nature with severe weather, increased flooding like the parking lot, and rising seas. Just this year, we lost a significant and perhaps the district's oldest contributing building, the old Foster Farm home at 19 Westerly Road. The Watch Hill Conservancy has been particularly busy these last few years, working jointly with the Watch Hill Fire District leadership to stand up to these various pressures, such as variance applications for larger or more expansive homes with no grounds for required hardship, proposed changes to the zoning resolution with little consideration to the community's historic character or the historic district, or town council initiatives to allow or call for parking on our residential streets. These pressures seem to be increasing, and it will be imperative that we stay vigilant to this component of our mission. And this work has become increasingly expensive, as the review and approval processes for such proposals tend to be technical, legal, bureaucratic, political, and more often end up litigious. We will need your generous support, both financially and showing up en masse, to continue this work in a meaningful way. In the sector of informing community, this was our 5th year of hosting our flagship seasonal Monday evening lecture series we call Landfair Live, right here in the Chaplain B. Barnes reading room. We work very hard to provide you a diverse lineup of topics and speakers that are timely and of interest to the community. We're fortunate to have a broad public support as shown by our ever-increasing attendance, and thank you all. I see many of you who come weekly. Thank you all for being with us. Just a personal side note, last week's talk sort of went over my head after minute 15, so I don't know who else is with me on that one, but then my husband asked me about, and I was surprised I talked for probably way too long, 30 minutes or more, about all the things I learned. So clearly something got in. In an effort to pay for the programming, we've kicked off a new community programming initiative this year. We've asked local businesses and families to support our efforts to inform the community by contributing to the organization as a sponsor, our community programming sponsorship effort. We look forward to building this program over time. This year, we will be able to raise just shy of $25,000 from 14 sponsors. If this work speaks to you, please consider becoming a sponsor. The 2022 season of Landfair Live has been a lot of fun, and if attendance is any indicator, it's also been a big success. Please come to our final season presentation, which is next Monday evening, August 29. It's going to be great. We have Pierce Rafferty coming, who is the executive director of the Henry L. Ferguson Museum, and he's going to speak about the history and deep roots of the close-knit enclave that is Fisher's Island. He'll share an engaging perspective of this unique and sometimes surprising social and economic history of Fisher's Island and its residents. So I hope to see you there. That's next Monday evening here in the reading room. And now I'd like to turn over the podium to my friend and colleague, Jane O'Connell, who will guide us through the presentation of last year's minutes and election of the Board of Directors. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Deb. What a year. It's great. My job is pretty, well, easy to do. The first thing I would like to ask you, and there were minutes, I think they were up front, if you would like a copy, minutes of the August 30th, 2021 annual meeting, and could I ask for approval? Could I ask for a motion? Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay. The next part of my job is to elect the 22-23 Board of Directors. A few comments on that. First is that there are 4 people going off the Board of Directors who have served basically since early days. Amazingly, we've been around a longer time than we realize. The first person we'd like to thank is Dick Sayre, who has been on since 1999, and that seems a century ago, but you're not that old. So. And Tom McWilliams came in very late. It was 2005, but that does still seem like a long time ago. Tom, thank you. Brian Thompson is a baby. He came in 2009. Brian, thank you. And Will Eglin, are you here? He's not here. He's probably working for his living. We don't, Deb and I can't figure out how long he's been on, but he's been on for certainly 5 years or so, and we want to thank him too. That brings us to the new slate, which is, I will give you the terms and the names and how long they've served, and then I will give you the proposed representative directors. As you know, we have not only elected directors in their own right, but every one of our sort of affiliated organizations that are so important to what we all do, the Lighthouse, the Library, the Fire District, the East Beach, and the 2 Yacht Club and the Misquamicut Club, all have representative directors, and we elect those as well. So bear with me while I read the names. Dennis Algier, for the next group is 22 to 25 term. And Dennis has served since 2016. Mary Dillow is served since, she's relatively new. She started last year in 2021. Georgia Jones has been on our board since 2018. Peter Gumminson since 2016, and Lawrence Whittemore since 2016. Peter August since 2019. Joan Beth Brown, 2017, Deborah Lamb, 2011, and Jane B. O'Connell, serving since 2000, which makes me very scarily the oldest one on the list. The Peter and Joan, Beth and Deb and I are 22 to 2024 terms. So, and then we have the representative directors: Peter Renahan for the Lighthouse, Joan Patton for the Library, Stephen Hayes for the Watch Hill Fire District, Andrew Musser for East Beach, J.B. Dawkes for the Watch Hill Yacht Club, and Lydia Cottrell for the Misquamicut Club. Could I have a motion to approve the slate? Second? Okay. Can I have approval of the slate of trustees for the next year and two? All and any negatives? Great. Okay. I think that's all I have to do, and we will move on to Jocelyn, who will lead us through the financial report.
everyone. Good to see you all tonight. We had a great turnout for the annual meeting. I think, Dan, do you mind turning me down a little bit? So I wanted to share with you the financial report. The Watch Hill Conservancy continues to be in good financial standing. The primary organizational needs are met by cash funds held in a general checking account over at Washington Trust. The Conservancy also has reserve funds invested with Raymond James and managed by Professional Planning Group, a local company here. This year, with the return of a very successful celebration of summer, many of you who attended, we do not expect to have to draw from those reserve funds this year. We did have to during peak COVID, and fortunately we are not in that position anymore. The Conservancy's primary sources of income are the annual membership campaign and other donations made to the organization, grant awards from private foundations and other grantors, and our celebration of summer fundraising event. 2022 saw an increase in funds sourced from each of those categories, so that was really great for us this year. The celebration of summer fundraising event had 275 households contribute towards the evening. We had nearly 220 guests who actually attended the event, and the party raised in that evening just shy of $145,000. So this was a really successful event for us, and thank you very much for all of you who contributed. This is the first year of the Conservancy's community programming sponsorship opportunity, and I'm very pleased to report that a number of local businesses and families made significant contributions or pledges to the programming that happens here in the Chaplain B. Barnes Reading Room. As Deborah mentioned, we raised, with these contributions and pledges, almost $25,000 in our first year. So this was an excellent first year. We learned a lot, and we look forward to developing the program further as the years go on. There was also an outpouring of support in memory of one of the Conservancy's founders and former leaders, Mr. Frederick B. Whittemore, with members all around, locally and far away, sending donations to the Conservancy in his name, and we couldn't be more thankful for that support as well. Use of this income is in support of the Conservancy's mission, which is to conserve and preserve Watch Hill and Little Narragansett Bay. Our work is year-round, and it does come at a cost. Mission-based work that we do is the focus of the Conservancy's planning when we are doing our budget each year. So I wanted to share with you some of the significant spending categories. Where do these funds that we raise go? And one of these is very visible. That is the Napa Tree Point Conservation Area programs and personnel that you see out there and you hear about through all of our communications. Additionally, the funds are used to develop and organize the Land Fear Live program and other presentations that happen here at the livery, and these are always at no cost to those who attend. That's very important to us. We also work with local stakeholders and community members to understand the impacts of sea level rise and plan for a resilient future in Watch Hill. This work is ongoing and very dynamic, so it takes a community to put that together. Lastly, we work by monitoring and participating in local processes in order to preserve the community character of Watch Hill. Deborah gave you a great summary of that work, and again, that's ongoing as well. And while our staff work hard to find funding for our programs through grants and other sources, it really goes without saying that the foundation of our fundraising and our work is our members. I cannot thank all of you enough for the meaningful contributions that you make to this organization to help us accomplish all of the things that we do. So you'll see on this slide here that's presented the 2022 membership campaign results. This has been our most successful year yet. We raised almost $230,000, which is about 20% higher than last year. And we have just shy of the same number of households as last year. So it's an interesting look at who's returning and who keeps coming back as members to the organization. And we also have a lot of new ones, which is really exciting. So again, I wanted to thank you for helping us to provide the important programming that we do to the community and also meeting our conservation and preservation goals. Your support is imperative in our continued success, and our 2023 membership materials will be sent out this fall. If you are not on the mailing list and would like to be, I did provide a sign-in sheet up front. Feel free to add your contact information if you'd like to learn more about the Conservancy's work. The 2022 season flew by. As Deborah mentioned, the final Lanphier Live is next Monday, August 29th at 6 p.m. right in this room. And our team will soon be shifting into budgeting and program for next year. So stay tuned. Thank you for another wonderful season. I hope that you have enjoyed attending these programs as much as we've enjoyed having you. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Deborah.
Thank you, Jocelyn. All right. I'm pleased to announce the creation of the Frederick B. Whittemore Award for Exceptional Service. This award recognizes individuals who've made exceptional, significant, or lifetime achievement in the conservation and preservation of the natural, scenic, and historic values of Watch Hill and Little Narragansett Bay. For those who may not know, you must be new to the community if you don't know, Fred Whittemore was one of our founding members and the first president of the Conservancy. This award honors the vision that Fred had for the organization to protect both the natural resources of Watch Hill and the historic and cultural amenities that define its unique community character. The award also recognizes and honors Fred's many accomplishments towards this mission. This year's recipient is wholly deserving of such an award. Presenting the award this evening is Hugh Markey. Hugh's been part of the Watch Hill Conservancy team, serving as a naturalist and as an educator on Napa tree for more than 15 years. Hugh was able to spend some quality time with our recipient recently and wrote the feature article in this summer's Conservator newsletter that either just arrived or is just about to arrive in your mailbox soon. Hugh?
Thank you. Good evening. There's a quote from John James Audubon that would seem to fit Ray Larson's decades of birding and record keeping. He wrote, "He who follows the feathered inhabitants of the forest and plains, however rough or tangled the paths may be, seldom fails to obtain the objects of his pursuit, provided he be possessed of due enthusiasm and perseverance." Throughout his entire life, Ray Larson has pursued birds with an abundance of enthusiasm and perseverance. That is part of the reason he is the first recipient of the Frederick B. Whittemore Award for Exceptional Service. As some of you might know, Ray began his adventures in birding in 1944. Inspired by an Audubon bird-watching kit his teacher ordered, he managed to rack up 17 species of birds in his first year. Not too shabby for a 9-year-old. At that time, Ray developed a habit that would be critical to his later contributions to birders around Rhode Island and beyond, keeping meticulous written records. As an adult, Ray spent 24 years in the Navy, some of which he was spent aboard a submarine as a ship's surgeon. Despite deployments that would mean 60 days underwater at a time, Ray's enthusiasm for birding never diminished. On one occasion, the sub on which he was serving rose to a shallow depth to allow for communications. The officer on watch asked Ray if he'd like to take a look around through the periscope. He accepted. You see where this is going, don't you? He accepted, and Ray being Ray, he managed to score a new bird for his life list with a fulmar bobbing around on the water's surface. Ray later taught at the Navy's School of Medicine in New London. He wrote to me, he told me, "A local birder told me about this amazing spot called Napa Tree Point. I went there with him, and it was really fascinating. There were shorebirds, gulls, and other birds. On that first trip, I saw 2 birds I'd never seen before in my life. The variety and numbers of gulls, terns, and migrating hawks has just been tremendous. During Ray's time stationed in Newport, he continued birding, often visiting Napa Tree Point Conservation Area. Although his work took him around the world, he eventually settled in Rhode Island. When he did, he began to inventory birds across the state, maintaining careful records that would be invaluable to both birders and ornithologists. That was in 1963. Nearly 60 years later, Reynold Larson has submitted over 6,000 checklists on eBird, the state's keeper of records that you'll be hearing more about shortly. His lists have documented over 300 bird species. These numbers are astonishing and have made a significant contribution to the body of knowledge surrounding Rhode Island's birds, their migrations, and their habitat. Ray's surveys are the basis for the Conservancy's international recognition as a globally important bird area. That is a major distinction, and one that we often refer to when we are telling people about the importance of Napa Tree Point's wildlife. Since 2007, Ray has been coming out once or twice a month, each month during the winter, in the summer, to conduct a systematic survey of birds along a systematic sampling transect, which is logged in with eBird. And Ray's surveys are physically demanding. The winters are cold, the summers are hot, footing is treacherous, and the bugs can be nasty. It's also important to note that Ray was awarded the Rhode Island Natural History Survey Distinguished Naturalist Award in 2021 for his work on Napa Tree and other sites in Rhode Island. Ray still patrols the Napa Tree shoreline, often chauffeured by our own Janice Sassy. He still carefully records his observation and shares his discovery with everyone interested. He's a good guy with a dry sense of humor that I really enjoy. I am honored to present the first annual Frederick B. Whittemore Award for Exceptional Service to Ray Larson. Congratulations.
I would.
Okay. Let's do it.
It took the Vietnam War to get me to Napa Tree Point. I was in the first year of internal medicine residency in Chicago in 1963. And things were brewing up, of course, in Asia. And talking to some of my fellow residents, we noticed that some of the guys weren't there anymore. Where's Charlie? What happened to Joe? They're down in Texas in the Army getting ready to go to Vietnam. I gave that some thought. I've never liked hot weather. And I decided, I think I'll go talk to the Navy. And I talked to a Navy recruiter, made arrangements to go on active duty with the Navy at the end of my first year of residency training. And then spent 30-something years in the Navy and elected to go to training for submarine and diving medicine. And submarine and diving medicine means New London. And while I was in New London, I met a young birder who said, there's this terrific place just over the border in Rhode Island. You've got to see it. The birds are marvelous. And I came over for my first of God knows how many trips to Napa Tree Point and had a wonderful time. It's perhaps the one place in the world that I have birded that I have enjoyed the most. So it is with great pleasure that I accept the honor that's being offered to me, and I thank you for your attention.
Recipient. This plaque will hang here in the room for everyone.
Didn't put the date of birth out there.
We'll keep that secret. But I also want to offer you this as a token of our appreciation. Our team has created a beautiful photo album memorializing some of your many trips out on Napa Trail.
Thank you so
I hope
much.
that you enjoy it. Thank you so much, Dr. Larson, for your many years of service to the Conservancy and to our community. I want to now introduce Dr. Peter August, who will introduce our keynote speaker for the evening. And if I have a motion, do I have a motion to close the meeting? Second? All in favor? Anyone against that? It's unanimously approved. We're closing the business meeting. Peter, take it away.
I'm delighted tonight to introduce our annual meeting speaker, Dr. Bill Thompson. Bill's accomplishments are so diverse, I need to divide my introduction into 3 different sections: his professional background, his passion, and what we asked him to share with you tonight. First, his professional background. Bill recently retired as a senior scientist and research coordinator representing the National Park Service in the North Atlantic Coast Cooperative Ecosystem Studies Unit at the University of Rhode Island. We call that the CESU. The CESU is the largest co-op in the nation between federal agencies and academia to collaborate and cooperate on research projects. URI leads the North Atlantic Coast CESU, and Bill was the Park Service rep for that program. Dr. Thompson is a wildlife biologist and has 25 years of federal service with the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Geological Survey, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the National Park Service. Bill, you just can't hold down a job with any one group, can you? His wildlife assignments have taken him from Rhode Island to Alaska and all points in between. Bill's research is in statistical ecology, where he develops accurate methods of monitoring wildlife. He has scores of publications in the best journals in this topic. Now, let me tell you something about Bill's passion. Bill is one of the region's premier wildlife photographers, especially birds. Napa Tree is a favorite destination for Bill, and you can find him at the Napa Tree Lagoon at sunrise, photographing our spectacular bird diversity. While looking for that $1 million photo shot, Bill keeps meticulous notes of the species he sees and their numbers. You know, you just can't take the statistician out of the man, can you? A day's observations end with Bill recording his species list on an online database run by Cornell University Bird Lab, and you've heard about this already, eBird. So, Bill's charge for tonight. We asked Bill to explain the eBird system. He's a regular poster, a regular user, and we thought you might find the whole system very interesting. We asked him to tell us what it is, how it works, and why it's important. Our Whittemore Award winner, Dr. Larson, is an eBird legend, and you know why with his 6,600 lists he's posted. We asked Bill to do one more thing, and that's share with us some of his fantastic bird photos. So the spectacular shots that you see in his PowerPoint are some of his photographic handiwork. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Bill Thompson, who will give the annual meeting address.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Awesome. Boy, it's a tough act to follow with Ray Larson. I'm thinking to myself, man, I should have given my presentation before they gave the award to Ray. I can't look good in this comparison for sure. But I thank you very much for coming tonight. I guess the business meeting's closed, so there's nothing keeping you here. So if you don't like what I'm talking about, you're free to leave, I guess. As Pete said, I do take a lot of enjoyment out of photographing birds. Napa Tree is certainly one of my favorite places to go. I have to concur with Ray. It's one of the favorite places I've ever been in terms of photographing birds and just being out there. It's just an amazing, magical place. So Pete asked me to give a little talk or overview of eBird. So I'm basically going to give sort of a 30,000 foot level overview, give you some information on how to find more information. And again, if you get bored with what I'm talking about, I've thrown in a photo on each slide, so you can at least look at the slides, the photos anyway. The first one here is, of course, the American oyster catcher, which I consider probably, when I think of Napa Tree, I think of American oyster catchers. To me, it's sort of the iconic species for Napa Tree, in addition to the piping plovers. It's really an amazing species. Okay, let's see if we can do this. Okay, so as Pete mentioned, I'm just going to talk about, hey, what is eBird, other than a snazzy name? Why is it important? How you can at least get started if you are interested in learning more about eBird and getting involved in eBird. How you can actually use the data, even if you don't contribute to eBird. The data are free to use, and how you might use it, especially in your birding pursuits if you're a birder. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about eBird and Napa Tree. I'm also going to talk, I'll briefly talk about each species in each slide. The second one we have here is a whimbrel, which is a large shorebird species. They pass through Napa Tree primarily in the fall migration, which for shorebirds around this area is July to October-ish, maybe early November. I just saw one yesterday at Napa Tree yesterday morning. So they're really interesting birds. So what is eBird? eBird's a community effort, a science community effort globally to give birders an opportunity to record what they see. And so it's a centralized database that was created by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They originally got a $20 million endowment. eBird started in about 2002. It took a few years for it to get going, but that's how they started. And again, it's a mechanism for people who are watching birds. You don't have to be professional birders. You can just enjoy birds. It gives a way for you to contribute your observations to a larger database. And as I mentioned, it's managed by the Lab of Ornithology. The next bird up here on the hit parade is another shorebird. We'll be heavy into shorebirds because I love shorebirds, plus it's shorebird migration. And Napa Tree is certainly well known for its shorebirds. This is a marbled godwit, another large shorebird species. I actually had two yesterday at Napa Tree, so they're also passing through in migration. They're pretty spectacular birds. So when they created this centralized database, so they obviously had to create a front end for people to easily enter their observations, because let's face it, we don't want to have to be computer geniuses. We just want to get our information in there as easily, as quickly as possible. So how you do that is you enter your observations into collectively at a checklist. So a checklist, and you can either use a mobile app on a smartphone or iPhone, what have you, which is pretty popular. It's an easy way of doing it. It's pretty simple. Also, you can enter it online on the ebird.org website. And that's actually how I do it. Because when I'm out there, I'm taking photos of birds. I'm keeping track of what I'm seeing, but I will then get home, and then as I'm going through my photos, I record my observations in eBird online. And basically, you're collecting, where you saw the bird, how you collected the data, how many birds you had, how long you looked, what distance you traveled, if you traveled, and of course which birds. So, and as Ray mentioned, when eBird started, he wasn't sure how many observations. Right now, there are more than 1 billion with a B observations globally in eBird, across not just the United States, obviously, but across the world. So that is an enormous, enormous data set. And this is all being collected by, people like you and me, and people who are not, necessarily, they're not professional ornithologists, they're bird lovers and whatnot. You can collect eBird lists when you're looking at your bird feeder, or you can collect them when you're walking out at Napa tree in a more systematic survey like Ray, and pretty much everything in between. This bird, another shorebird, is a short-billed dowitcher, another species that's passing through Napa tree right now. So when you enter your observations, the where part is there. You have two options. You can either do it as a custom location, so you create your own location in eBird, and it's very simple to do, either on the app or online. Or you can use either an existing custom location that you created, or what's called an eBird hotspot. And that is a spot that's especially known for being great for birds. And it's created by birders so that other birders will know of it, and also they will create checklists in that same location. So that's really important, because when you want to access the data, like Napa tree, obviously, that's a hotspot. So people going out to Napa tree, like myself, will be collecting bird data, entering checklists on the hotspot. So they all go in the same location. So when you go online or wherever to get the data, you have a place to look to say, hey, what's been seen at Napa tree today or last week or whatever. You can access the checklist that were been entered in there. And this is just a snippet. Oh, get my old school pointer here. I knew better. I stupidly brought a laser pointer. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, this is just a snippet of a Napa tree area, and there's a few of these pins. That's the hotspot pin for Napa tree. There's a few other ones scattered around, and those are shown up, so you can actually go on a map and on the eBird site, or on using the app, and you can look to see if there's a hotspot there, or where other hotspots might be. The color of the pins, like the one in Napa tree, the darker the color, I don't know if this is on. The darker the color, the more birds that have been reported there. Oh, this might be on. Let me just turn this off. Okay. So Napa tree and eBird. So these are the number of eBird observations. Not necessarily, obviously, won't contain all the birds that were there that weren't entered in eBird, but it's all the eBird observations. For Napa tree, it has over 250 species have been recorded just in eBird at Napa tree. So that's a darker red. If you have some places have a darker color, lighter color, but that's just sort of a way of, as a first pass, when you're looking at the map of pulling up on the eBird site where you're looking at hotspots that are displayed as pins in an area, you can sort of get an idea of how many places the hotspots, which are the hotter hotspots in terms of which have the most species reported there. And those observations, when you enter an observation in eBird, they're reviewed by the ones that are flagged as rare. So either a bird that's rare for the location or rare for the time of year, or both, that'll get flagged in eBird as a rare observation. That automatically goes to a volunteer eBird reviewer, bird expert, to review in order to confirm or not that that really was that bird. The bird here on this photo is a Wilson's plover, which is rare for Rhode Island. It showed up in Napa tree last year in May. So this is actually was flagged as rare. But again, it showed up here at Napa tree. The other thing I should have mentioned too about eBird and the rarity, and when you have a rare observation, or any observation actually, if you want to, you can actually upload photos of the bird if you've taken a photo or recorded an audio It's always helpful, especially if you have a bird that's flagged as rare, has some way of documenting. You want to have detailed information about the bird, but it's more and more that it's really helpful to have a picture or a photo of the bird that you've seen, or audio if it happens to be a species that is difficult to discern from another species that's similar. So having that call or song is helpful too. So why is eBird, important? I think you probably figured out some of these things by, some of the things that Ray has said and Pete and others have said about the importance of it. But I want to, again, emphasize that eBird data are free. So when all these data are being entered online or through the app, they're accessible to people everywhere. And they have really been used, importantly, for conservation and decision making. They've been used in hundreds of peer-reviewed scientific publications. They've been used in thousands of graduate student and other student projects, undergraduate, interns, whatever projects. So the data, it's a really rich data source to explore and use. And it helps really inform both conservation and research and where there's things that you want to maybe need more information or emphasize more research upon in the bird world. This, of course, is an osprey, and that's a scup or porgy in its talons. Again, photographed here at Napa tree. So, the data, when it say inform research and conservation, it has important information on, species status, the relative abundances, the movement patterns, when they're someplace where, if there's trends and movements and whatnot. So that's really helpful. It's been used in actual conservation habitat management planning and helping inform law and policy. So the data itself is a really, really important data set. So when you're collecting the data, you're a birder or just love birds, you're collecting the information, you're entering the data, it really is contributing to a larger effort in conservation, which is really, really important. It's a great, great conduit for bringing a lot of data that otherwise wouldn't be collected, because this is all free, this is all volunteer. People do it because they love to do it. So you couldn't pay this many people to collect this data. It would be, Bill Gates couldn't afford that. So it's really a great thing. This is a northern harrier flying around. At Napa tree, you often see those, and especially in the fall. So how do you start with eBird? Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of step-by-step because we'd be here all night, and I don't think you want to be here all night. But it's really, the best thing I do is for you to go to, if you are interested in learning more about eBird, how to get started with it. It's really straightforward. Just go to the ebird.org site, their home site, and go to the help menu. And when you go to the help page, this is just a snippet of their help page, but it goes over a lot of the, getting started with it. There are training videos on how to use eBird. There's how to, the best practices for using eBird. All these things are, and they have a lot of resources on the eBird site. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in using eBird, whether you have a bird feeder or just, even just an incidental observation, all the data are great and important to really contribute to a larger conservation effort. So I'd encourage you at least to look into, if you are recording any bird observations or are interested in doing it, I strongly encourage you to get on the eBird site and look at some of the resources. They have great resources for introducing you how to use eBird and again, YouTube videos and all that good fun stuff. So it's really pretty painless to do that. And this, of course, is a black skimmer, another favorite bird of Napa tree, one of my favorite birds anyway. You'll see them in the summer, usually late summer. I think this was taken in July of this year, this particular photo. Was just maybe a month ago, if that. They're just great birds. They're in the gull family, but related to terns. They're just a fun bird. So as I mentioned before, and I can't emphasize enough, when people talk about eBird, they're thinking, well, it's just the hardcore birders, it's the ornithologists. No, it isn't. It's for everybody. It's for anybody who's interested in birds, anybody who's watching birds. It's you have all skill levels. There are different resources online. If you're on Facebook, there is what's this bird Facebook page. So if you aren't sure what a bird is, you get a photo, you'll post it on there. People can tell you. If you have friends who are birders, people are always my experience, people are always very open and with their time for birders to help other people with identifying birds, because it's a passion. You know, it's something that people who watch birds and love birds, they just love to do it. They love to talk about it. They love to look at other photos of other birds. So that's something, if you're a beginner or haven't really done much birding, I'd encourage you to jump right in. I also should mention the Merlin identification application that was developed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's an artificial intelligence type application, so that it has two parts. It will help you identify a photo of a bird, and it will help you identify sounds if you record a sound. So it has a way you can actually, in real time, record a sound and see what's singing or calling. It's a great thing. It's downloaded free. It's a free app. You can download your phone. But there's always a caveat. There's always a but. Is that you just have to be, it's not foolproof. It's a great way to introduce yourselves to birds. It will help you identify some birds. But again, it's just a program. It's a computer. It's a very good artificial intelligence program, but it's not foolproof. So it's always, I'm mentioning it now because it is helpful, but don't be over-reliant on it and saying, well, Merlin said it, I saw a great auk, well, or an ivy-billed woodpecker. Well, maybe not. But it is actually pretty astounding how good it is. But again, you have to be careful when you use it, because it's not the last word. But I'm mentioning it because it is a free app, and it is a great way to go out and start learning birds. Like anything else, if you get a clear recording, it's better. Or if you get a clear photo or a good angle, it's better. If you don't, you're going to get some crazy things. Like I play around with it a little bit just to see how it does under certain circumstances, and I've gotten some pretty wild results. Even on photos that weren't all that bad. At least I didn't think were that bad. So, but again, it's actually amazingly good for what it does. It's just not perfect. So, but that is a great way of actually getting out there and learning some things. But it's always good to have like an experienced birder who knows calls or knows the birds to help along and confirm what Merlin's telling you, for sure. This is a snowy egret. It was feeding in the Napa Tree Lagoon. I just happened. I have to be honest. People say, "Well, that's an awesome photo." I said, "Yeah, but it's not. It was luck." I wish I could say it was skill, but I just happened to get it at the right moment. So, but that's also one of my favorite photos: a snowy egret feeding on a small fish in real time. I just have a couple more things to talk about. How can you use the eBird data when you go in and you're getting into eBird? You can create set up bird alerts for specific species or for rare birds. They'll send you an automatic like email alert if you want to do it that way, or you can look on the website. Anytime someone reports a rare bird in your area or the area of interest, it'll come up on either in your email or on the website. You can check the website as well. You can explore different existing eBird records by different spatial scales, by county, by state, by hotspot. All these different things you can do and look at just by trends. This little snippet on here is actually, I just took at the top, for Rhode Island, but basically this is just one of the things you can explore with eBird, but it'll map, so snow goose, it'll map all the eBird observations over, you can set the time frame, but this is for all, since eBird was created and all the records that were in there. It'll show you these green areas where, in this case, snow geese have been reported in Rhode Island, the state. I put it at the state level. The thicker the green, the more observations during that time. And you can see that it's basically, they come in the fall and the winter, and then, leave in the spring and on around in the summer for the most part. But that's something that, if you're learning where the birds are, and you can click on those different buttons and learn where the observations were actually recorded to see where they're recorded. So it can help you identify areas where you might want to see a snow goose, or best places you might see a snow goose, just for instance. But this is for all the birds in this case that have been recorded in eBird in Rhode Island. So it's a great way of diving into some data. Especially it can help you look at birding if you're birding in a new area or looking for new areas of bird. Actually, it's a great resource to provide that information. The photo here is an adult common tern feeding its young, which is actively happening now, and well, not this moment, but on Napa Tree in this area. There's a whole bunch of common terns out there. If you haven't been out in Napa Tree in the lagoon area in a while, hundreds of common terns with some other tern species in there. But it's pretty amazing. It's a real spectacle. There we go. One other thing I wanted to mention about using eBird data, it's a lot of the times the eBird checklist, they actually have a website, which I think is through Colorado State, but it's in conjunction with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's called Birdcast. So especially in the spring and the fall migrations, you can actually track individual species or large species, groups of species that are moving through your area. So this is just a depiction from the 18th. So there's some movement. The lighter areas indicate where there's more birds moving through, especially in the evening. The darker areas, it hasn't so much. So not a lot is going on at the moment, but especially in the spring when you have songbirds moving through, it's a great way of sort of seeing, well, when are the birds most likely going to be moving into the area. It doesn't mean they're going to land here, but if they're moving in large numbers, you're more likely, higher probability of actually seeing more birds, spring or fall migrants. So it's a really cool feature that's also linked to eBird data and real-time checklist, so it's this real-time information. This is a black tern. This was taken, I think, last week at the Napa Tree Lagoon, one of the other tern species that are moving through right now. And just a couple more things I want to talk about. eBird and Napa Tree. This is Watch Hill Conservancy. You care about Napa Tree. What's it got to do with Napa Tree? Well, first of all, there are 3 federally listed species that routinely use Napa Tree, which I'm sure you're aware of. The roseate tern, the piping plover, and the red knot. The roseate tern is federally endangered. Both the piping plover and the red knots are federally threatened. Now, what's this got to do with eBird? Well, obviously, there's not a lot of. We're always want to get more information on these species and other species as well. But all of the information, like Ray's been collecting, other folks have been collecting in Napa Tree, that all helps inform when the species are there, where they are, and basic information on their movements and the relative numbers and trends over time. And that's really, really important information. It's hard to get information on rare birds. So this is a way of actually collecting large amounts of data cheaply. And so this is a really important thing. And Napa Tree is just a stellar place for doing that. I should probably just quickly say, so yeah, roseate tern, piping plover, red knot. One other thing I want to mention about Napa Tree is a unique area, trying to sort of a factoid type thing. A couple years ago, we had 2 Rhode Island firsts that were in Napa Tree, or at Napa Tree. One was a pteric sandpiper found by Jan St. Jean. It was the 3rd record of the species in the lower 48. There aren't that many North American records at all, but in the lower 48, this was the 3rd record of this species. It's a Eurasian species, so they typically you don't see them in North America. You might see them in Alaska once in a while, but it was an amazing thing, and it was a first for Rhode Island. They have not been. I think there was one record, possibly in Massachusetts, I think, but basically, Rhode Island's only one of 3 places on the East Coast and in the lower 48 that has a record of this species, and it's at Napa Tree. So that was really cool. The other bird that showed up about a week later at Napa Tree was a redneck stint, another Rhode Island first species. So it just sort of gives you a little example of just how important Napa Tree is not just to shorebirds in general, but to these rare birds that pop up. They come here for a reason. There's a lot of food resources and stuff. It's just a great spot. So I just thought I wanted to include that in here. And finally, I can't really add much that was been talked about Ray, but I did want to sort of reinforce some of the things Ray's been doing, going out to Napa literally for many decades, almost 60 years, I guess. So that it was way before eBird. But even so, Ray has contributed a considerable amount of checklists to eBird. He has 423 checklists for Napa tree, just Napa tree. And that's 3.5 times as many as the next person who's entered checklists. And I know because I'm that next person. So 3.5 times as many as I've put out there. And I'm out there a lot too, but not as much as Ray. Certainly not nearly as long. And of course, he has almost 6,700 eBird checklists for Rhode Island. That's just an amazing thing, given that eBird just is a relatively new thing. Of course, he has 177 species in eBird for Napa tree, but overall, he's had over 300 species. So he's just made an amazing contribution. And as Hugh mentioned earlier, Napa tree is a globally important bird area, which is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And a lot of that designation was due to Ray and his data collection, his record keeping, his contributions, not just to eBird, but all his bird collections and whatnot. So it all ties together. There's a reason that Ray's getting this award. I mean, it's not just Napa tree for sure, but he's certainly made a huge impact on Napa tree, which is just an amazing spot. Napa Tree Point is just amazing. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.